are off the homestead today and are at our local National Cemetery. The National Cemetery Association began during the Civil War and is responsible for 157 national cemeteries in the U.S. and its territories. Today, we are talking about leaving a legacy. Stick around, because we have a special guest joining us today.
You know, you may think that your life is boring and not worth talking about. That's not true. You talk about stories of how things were when you were younger around the family table. You just need to write those things down. For example, I was talking to my granddaughter here recently and telling her some story, and she said, "Well, Grandma, why didn't you just get out your cell phone?" I had to explain to her we didn't have cell phones then. We carried around a quarter with us. Technology changes. Social norms change. When Dwight Eisenhower ordered that photographs be taken of Nazi concentration camps, a lot of people questioned his wisdom in doing this. He knew that someday somebody would say that that never happened. Part of leaving a legacy is reaching back to an ancestor, researching them, writing about them. Today, we're at the Prescott National Cemetery. We are joined today by Mr. Rob Berryman, who is the president of our local Sons of the American Revolution, and he's going to tell us about joining a legacy society, what that means, how to research some of that, putting flesh on the bones of that ancestor, and what Sons of the American Revolution is all about, and how you can join too.
Well, thank you, Donna. I appreciate you having me here today. The Sons of the American Revolution is a national society that is separated into state societies and then local chapters. And the primary goal of the Sons of the American Revolution, as well as the Daughters of the American Revolution, is to preserve and teach the history of the revolution, to preserve those principles that our founding fathers believed in and literally risked their lives and their fortunes to pursue a new country. And so it is a wonderful legacy, as you mentioned, to leave to your children. You know, for so long, history has kind of taken a backseat in our country to social media.
Yes.
And things of that nature. So generationally, you know, more than ever, I think we need and have a need in our country to remind our youth and younger generations about their history and about the sacrifices that were made in order to give us those rights that we have today.
Especially now as we're at our 250th birthday.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
You know, what's interesting about that, when we talk about doing genealogical research,
Yes.
like I said, birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
So when you find that one patriot that you can prove you are descended from, the odds of you having multiple patriots is enormous. We have 2 members of our chapter who have over 30 documented
Wow.
Revolutionary War patriots. But generally, people believe or feel like to be a patriot, you had to have fought.
True.
And that is not necessarily the case.
Exactly.
Many things qualify you as a patriot. One is providing material support to the armies, to the colonial army. And that could mean providing horses, providing food, providing lodging.
Now, is that selling those provisions to the army, or is that selling them at a reduced rate? Is it giving it to them?
You know, that's a good question. I do not know the actual answer of, but I'm going to say that was giving.
Okay.
Because believe it or not, when you go back and read a lot of, and us SAR and DAR people, we are complete history nerds.
Yes.
So if you like history, we're the folks for you.
Yes.
So when we talk about, you know, researching our genealogy, you know, back in the old days, it was very, very difficult because you had to go to courthouses, you had to go to churches and dig through thousands of pages of archives to find that one little tidbit that proved that lineage. It was very, very difficult prior to modern day technology and the internet.
Yes.
So there are many avenues now. Ancestry is one of those avenues.
Yes.
Family search. The LDS Church is probably the greatest single group of genealogy experts on earth. And so leaning on the church is actually, we do that a lot, matter of fact, asking them for help with genealogy research. Speaking of research and these different avenues that there are today, which they are great. One of the things to remember is that for the most part, those are shared like group sourcing sites. And so
Yes.
the things that you see on Ancestry may not necessarily be true. It's something that someone else put there. And so the process of becoming an SAR or DAR member is a lot more stringent than that. So you have to prove each generation back to that patriot.
Well, yes and no.
Yes and no.
Because if you can prove you're related to somebody else that has already
Correct.
proven that back to that person, then yes, you can go through that way. But one of the things that I'll tell new genealogists is, even though Aunt Ethel did all this family research, believe none of it unless you can find the absolute truth. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. Just make sure it's not the Grand Canyon.
That's right. That's right. And depending upon the size of that leap determines whether the National Society will approve your application.
Exactly.
But you make a great point. Most of the people that I have helped join either of the societies, we did so with someone's record copy, their lineage,
yes,
that is already approved.
Well, that's how my boys got in.
Yes.
Through my lineage, through DAR.
Correct.
And mine, I only needed to go back another 2 or 3 generations.
Right. And, spoiler alert.
Yes.
When the SAR was founded in the late 1800s, the ladies asked if they could be a part of that society, and the men said no. And a year later, the Daughters of the American Revolution was founded.
Yes. Okay.
And since that time, you've been outdoing us for, 150, 175 years. Your databases for research and resources are spectacular. There are probably, I've seen numbers 5 to 6 times more DAR members than there are SAR members. So thank you for everything that the DAR does. When those men signed the Declaration of Independence, they were signing their death warrants. They were saying in writing, I am committing treason.
Yes.
And had they been caught, they would have been executed.
Yes.
And so I don't know that a lot of people understand that. And all of those men who signed the Declaration were affluent colonists.
Yes.
They had property, they had money.
Things that they could lose.
They could lose everything.
Yes.
It wasn't like some destitute person who had nothing to lose. They had everything to lose, including their lives. Now, an interesting thing, I said that it's the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That is not true.
Okay.
July 4th, 1776 is the anniversary of ratifying and approving the Declaration of Independence. It was not signed until August 2nd, 1776. That's when John Hancock famously put his large signature.
Yes.
And you know why he did that? Why his signature was so large?
Why?
So that the king could read it without his spectacles.
Nice.
Right?
Now, something else, when people think of friends, family that have joined the military today, when you join the military, it's for a long period of time. But these men that joined the fight for our freedom, what was the normal amount of time? Because it was a shorter time.
Absolutely. And that's a great question. And it really feeds the greatness of George Washington. Because the typical enlistment was for a year, 1 year. And many people walked away after a year. And, famously at Valley Forge and many other times throughout the Revolution, George Washington encouraged the men to stay, even though their enlistments were up. But, you know, our setting here today in the Prescott National Cemetery, every person here, for the most part, served or was a spouse of someone who served our country.
Yes.
And, you know, today, especially after 9/11, it became very popular to thank service people for their service.
Yes.
And if you go back to my parents' generation and serving in the Vietnam War,
Yes.
it was the exact opposite.
It was.
And that is a tragedy in our country.
Yes.
Many of those men didn't go there voluntarily to fight in that war. You know, most of those men were drafted.
Yes.
And had to go.
Yes.
And to be treated the way they were when they came back was horrible. It's really important to understand that our country as we know it, or even, you know, 250 years ago, would not exist if not for those people who were willing to risk their lives.
Yes.
And I didn't say men, I said people.
People, yes.
Because so many men and women took tremendous risks. You know, one of the cool things, if you read about history that you don't really see a lot about, is espionage. And if you read a lot about George Washington and his motives and how he did things, spying was a huge component of the revolution on both sides. And so without those spy rings, that wouldn't have happened. And there was a lot more of it. Women in particular serving as servants in the homes or the places where the British were living and staying.
Okay.
Served as spies.
Nice.
They would serve dinner. They would listen into the dinner conversations.
Yes.
And then they would send people to report. You know, there are many instances when Washington, after the Battle of Brooklyn, and Washington is fleeing New York, when the Maryland 400 are protecting him as he goes, there were many times where the British Army stopped. And a few of those stories talk about how they were invited to dinner. The officers were invited by these ladies and this lady's daughters to come and have dinner, which slowed the Army's progress, and how they spied and learned about the intentions. So there's super cool stories. You know, another fact that a lot of people don't really understand is more patriots died in British prison camps or boats than they did in combat.
Interesting.
Over 18,000 patriots died while prisoners, primarily from starvation and disease, rather than dying on the battlefield. And it's really cool when you start to dig into, you know this as well as I do, but for the people who are listening today, you get on that computer at 7 o'clock at night and you look up and it's 3 a.m. because you're solving this mystery, this puzzle that's fascinating about the people who came before you. It's really enjoyable to go back and make your way through that.
But as you're going through and finding this stuff, and granted, Revolutionary War, we're not finding photographs, but when you find a photograph of a family member that you didn't know what they looked like before,
right?
Or you come across a story that somebody has written, an autobiography about their lives, which is a huge part of leaving your legacy, not just the stuff from back then, but have you written your story on your life to leave it for...
Right. Well, I can tell you this, when you go back and you research these different generations, and mind you, there are stories all through our American history, not just the Revolution.
Exactly.
It's incredible to think back about how tough those people were.
Yes.
You know, and the things that they accomplished that in modern day we would cower. You find these amazing things. We were able to locate, so the Government Services Administration manages all government properties, with the exception of the VA. I believe the VA manages their properties. But back and this is an organization that's been around forever. And so I was able to retrieve Silas Bowker Sr.'s, his Revolutionary War pension document.
Nice.
And I want to say it's 3952. But it simply says, you know, Silas Bowker Sr., and his dates of service, and then what he did. And it said private, scout, and spy.
Spy. Wow.
So spy is not a family legend that our great-great-great-great-great-grandpa
Yep.
was a spy.
Yep.
The United States government documented that he was a spy on his pension document. And that is just a super cool thing, right?
That is.
Birth certificates are an easy way to track your family lineage, but they haven't always been around. Rob gives us some alternatives to step into the past.
You know, it's interesting because, birth certificates didn't start until 1905.
Yes, and they weren't required everywhere.
Correct. And death certificates really in the mid 1800s, around the Civil War time. And then before 1850, 1850 was the first U.S. census that listed all names. So when you start,
Yes.
I run out of birth certificates, and then I can't find death certificates anymore. Now I'm going to census to document my lineage, and then I get to 1850, and that's it.
That's
so
it. Yep.
Before 1850, it was head of household,
Head of household.
and then
Yep.
hatch marks for all the different occupants of age and race and gender.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If not for the Rose family Bible,
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't be here. I had to prove my first patriot.
Oh, okay.
And so I had to go back
Wow.
7 generations to do it.
I was fortunate I didn't have to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So most of the time, many times what we find is so many of my friends I've helped get into the society, their grandmother or their aunt is a member. And it's as simple as going and getting it and then proving a couple generations and you're done. We talk about the legacy of being a member of the DAR or the SAR and providing that legacy to your family. An important thing to remember is if you decide you want to be a part of our society and you are a father or a grandparent, etc., it's a great legacy to give your children. Don't just apply for yourself. If you're applying in the SAR, apply for you and your male children and your male grandchildren. All of my grandchildren are SAR members.
Oh, okay.
All my male grandchildren are SAR members. And the exact same applies for the DAR.
Okay.
If you're a mother and you have daughters and you have granddaughters, give that legacy to them. And mind you, you get a significant discount on multiple family members when you do it.
There you go.
And so it's a little financial incentive, but it's just such a great legacy to give them, long term.
What a great Christmas gift.
It is. It is.
So, if somebody would like to join Sons of the American Revolution, what do they need to do?
Well, that is a great question. Really, all you have to do is ask. We are very, very eager to help people realize that family history and join our society and help us with all the things that we do. So you can simply Google Prescott Chapter Sons of the American Revolution. You can go to the National Society, SAR.org, or our state society, AZSAR.org.
Thank you, Mr. Berryman. I appreciate you coming out. You look wonderful. Your authentic uniform, down to the little hook and eyes and all of that. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge. And we thank you all for watching. And I'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to do this. As you can tell, we're very, very passionate about it.
We are, yes.
And we would love to have more passionate people as a part of our society.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
A simple life.